All right, guys, we are going to keep working on learning about freedom and learning about civil rights and how, through the course of U.S. history, how we've gotten to where we are now in regards to freedom and rights for people. We are on day 2 of what's the big deal about freedom. And hopefully you guys had a chance yesterday to talk to mom and dad, and grandma and grandpa, talk to them a little bit about freedom. What does freedom mean to you? What does freedom mean to your family? So today we're going to continue on. Yesterday we did the first part of the book where it was kind of a review of all the things we've talked about in U.S. history. We talked about people coming over here from Europe, from England, and wanting to be independent from the king and from England. We talked about the Revolutionary War. That was yesterday, and how we wrote the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, so that we could change the Constitution, or the Bill of Rights, to talk about the rights that the government can't take away from us. We talked about making amendments to the Constitution. We also talked about the idea that even though it said we the people, even though we're talking about how great it is to have all these rights, the problem was they were not equal for everyone. So, you know, good news is they were working on those documents. They were working on freedoms and liberties and things. Bad news is they were not doled out evenly. So that brings us to today, what I want to talk to you guys about. It says, with the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, America was a perfectly free country, right? Not quite. The best way to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all Americans is to vote for our leaders, the people who make the laws. If the laws don't treat everyone fairly, voters are free to change our leaders, who then change the laws. So if the leaders are making laws that we don't like, then we can vote for different leaders. Vote for leaders that will make the laws that we do want. However, the sad truth is, in early America, most of the people who lived in the new United States weren't allowed to vote. So who can you think of? Do you know who might not have been allowed to vote at that time? It included the Native Americans. So the people that were here first, we didn't allow them to vote, who had settled the continent long before the new Americans arrived. The African Americans that were forced to be slaves. So we have the people that were here originally. We don't let them vote. The people that we have forcefully brought to the country and enslaved. We don't let them vote. Women couldn't vote. In most places, the only people who could vote were white men who owned property, like farms and houses. So it was a great idea that we could have the freedom to choose our own leaders, but only white men who own property. So you can see we've got a few issues we need to work out here. If all men are created equal, as the Declaration said, then why shouldn't we all have the same rights and freedoms? And what about women? Slowly, over the next 200 years, men and women from all walks of life would struggle for and gain these rights. We're a more free and fair country today, thanks to their efforts. So I want you guys, again, you can pause it right here. If you want to talk about how are we more free and fair? How's the country more free and fair? By allowing everyone of age to vote. So men, women, black, white, Native Americans, everyone can vote. So how is that making our country more free and fair? So here's a picture of voting. I don't know if you guys have ever been with your mom or dad to the polls. You can go in November. It's a great thing to do. Go with mom and dad and see what it's like to vote. It says, wait a minute, slavery is the opposite of freedom. How did it exist here in America? So that's a good question, right? Because we're talking about like, hey, we're, America is, land of the free. It's like, wait a minute, how can it be land of the free if we've got this whole group of people that are forcefully brought here, enslaved, and given basically no freedom. It's hard to imagine today that slavery was once a way of life in America. If you had been born a slave, remember like Harriet Tubman, we talked about she was born a slave? You would have been taken away from your parents as a young child and forced against your will to work with no pay. So no allowance, no paycheck, nothing. You just did what they said. You do it and you work and you don't question it and you don't make any money. Slave owners could sell you just like property, just like you can sell your, bike that you've outgrown or your PlayStation because you want to get an Xbox. That's like your property, the stuff that you own. You were actually, at the time, able to do that with people, with human beings. Slave owners could sell you anytime they chose to a large, faraway farm or a plantation, the same way they would sell an ox or a mule. And you wouldn't be free to choose where you lived or how you spent your time. So you don't want to be taken away from your parents as a little kid and shipped off to some plantation in Georgia and never see your family again. Most slave children didn't have many clothes, shoes, or a real bed to sleep in and never even knew their birthdays. That's why, you remember when we learned about Harriet Tubman and they said about when they thought she was born, but don't even really know exactly? No one would have been allowed to teach you to read or write, and you could have been badly beaten if you tried to escape. Remember, Harriet Tubman was beaten just for eating an apple. So sadly, many of our nation's founders, like Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, kept slaves. Slave owners lived comfortable lives in large homes with fancy clothes and lots of food, and because of the hard work they forced slaves to do. Even so, all sorts of people in America realized that slavery was wrong, and they tried to get our leaders to end slavery. These people were called abolitionists. So that's a big word, abolitionist. Over time, northern states outlawed slavery. So thousands of slaves in the southern states would risk their lives to escape to freedom. So this shows Harriet Tubman here, like we read about yesterday, and these are the people escaping to freedom through the Underground Railroad, just like we read about last year. So now we're coming to this sort of boiling point of the northern states outlawing slavery, the southern states want to keep their slaves. So that brings us to what we've been talking about for the last few weeks, the Civil War. Ultimately, it took a terrible war, which is the Civil War, and a great president to end slavery in America. So does anybody know who that president was? You guys have done some work with him. Think about that for just a minute. He read lots of books. He wore the tall hat. Do you remember who it was? It's Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln didn't like slavery. So when he was elected president in 1860, the southern states decided to start their own separate country, the Confederacy, so that they could continue to keep slaves. Lincoln was committed to keeping America, the Union, one whole country, and this is how America's Civil War started. Okay, so that's where we're going to stop for today because this brings us up to slavery and the Civil War. But, okay, here's what I want to tell you about, and you're going to have to kind of hang with me for a minute here, okay? So one thing that I think is awesome about this school that I really enjoy is I get to learn so many things right along with you guys. And I've been doing, lots of research and things about the Civil War, the Civil Rights Movement, all that stuff. Like I kind of been doing research to prepare the lessons to teach you guys. In conjunction, or originally it wasn't in conjunction, originally it was a separate idea. I was thinking like, okay, today's Cinco de Mayo, and I wanted to do something with that because we've been talking about North America, but I wasn't sure really what I wanted to do. And so in doing some research on that, I found out about the connection between Cinco de Mayo and the Civil War that I did not know. And I am 42 years old and had no idea about this. So I think it's awesome that I am learning it now, but also that you guys are learning it as 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So Cinco de Mayo. Cinco, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th, Cinco de Mayo, 5th of May 5th. Today is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th. Okay, now you guys may have heard of this. If you have heard of it, it may be because you maybe hear about it on a TV commercial. You might hear about it if you go to a Mexican restaurant. And that may be kind of all you know about it. And that's okay. We're going to learn more today. Okay, so buckle up with me for just a second. We're going to have to just take a breath and get ready for me to impart some information on you, okay? So we've been talking about the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, slavery, North, South, Union, Confederacy. We've been talking about all that, right? Okay, so now, here's this article that I came across and found super interesting. The article is called How Cinco de Mayo, today, helped prevent a Confederate victory in the Civil War. Okay, so let's find out how Cinco de Mayo and the Civil War are linked, okay? Now, there's a lot of confusion about the origins of Cinco de Mayo. And some people think it's like Mexican Independence Day. It is not. Cinco de Mayo actually marks the unlikely defeat of the elite French forces by an undermanned Mexican army at the Battle of Puebla. So unlikely means like, who would have thought? Like, it's unlikely. It's kind of like, you know, at recess, sometimes you guys will play kickball or something, and you might have like the kindergartners, first and second, or like maybe my class competing against Miss Sizemore's class. So if you guys won, that'd be awesome, but it would have been unlikely. Like, people thought it would be Miss Sizemore's class that would win kickball. So if our class won, like, that would be a surprise, right? So at the Battle of Puebla, which is in Mexico, the French and the Mexican armies were fighting this battle, and surprise, the undermanned Mexican army won, and that battle was on May 5th. So here's our connection. In fact, this underdog Mexican victory may have played a part in preventing the French Emperor Napoleon III from helping the Confederacy win the Civil War. So remember, the Confederacy, that's the southern states that wanted to keep slavery. And the French Emperor Napoleon, so France, all the way over there in Europe, they were on the side of the Confederacy. That's who they were helping. Okay, so now let's see how this all is gonna come together, okay? So Mexico owed some of the countries in Europe, Spain, the UK, France, they owed them some money, okay? And so the lead up to the battle began in 1860 when the Mexican government, bankrupt after decades of internal conflict, announced that it was suspending debt payments to the European creditors for 2 years. Okay, so they owed them some money and they're not gonna be able to pay it right now, okay? So Napoleon from France figured that this is gonna be his opportunity, right? This is his chance to get his hands on Mexico. So he's thinking like, this is gonna become the first like French colony, the first colony in the new French stronghold in North America. And Abraham Lincoln, remember the kid that likes the books, the guy with the tall hat, President Abraham Lincoln, he's busy. He's got his hands full with the Civil War in the United States, and Napoleon's like, he's busy. This is my chance, right? So the French, so Napoleon, he was helping the Confederacy, the southern states, because he was giving them guns. He wanted their cotton. He was giving them guns. He's helping them out. He's arming them, right? So just like if you're having like a Nerf gun battle or something, it's gonna be cool if somebody is gonna give you bigger, better, cooler, more Nerf guns. They needed more guns. Napoleon's gonna hook them up with guns. He's gonna take the cotton. Oh, let me put my cotton away. The cotton that I will show you in a later video. I had cotton out here a minute ago. Anyway, he wanted their cotton, so stay tuned for a later video. I'm going to show you the cotton, okay? So here's what happens. So in early 1862, this well-trained French forces, they march from Veracruz. They're marching to try to capture Mexico City. But on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, they get defeated by the Mexican general and his army. It says a ragtag group of enlisted and volunteer troops. Ragtag. Do you know what that means? So saying that these were not the people you look at and go, man, they've got it together. These are like volunteers. They're kind of people from here and there. They don't have, they may not be the best fighters, but they win. And so the French army retreats and they don't come back to Puebla for a year. So here's what happens. Some people contend that this year-long delay of the French invasion gave Abraham Lincoln's generals enough time to win decisive Union victories before Napoleon could provide upgraded artillery and munitions to the Confederacy. So, that is very interesting, I think. And Cinco de Mayo is mostly actually celebrated here in the United States. You think of it as being like a Mexican holiday, but it's celebrated in Puebla where the battle was fought. But other than that, mostly here. So the critical timing of the French defeat at the Battle of Puebla was not lost on Mexican Americans and other Latinos living in California. Many have flocked to the state during the gold rush. Remember, we talked about the gold rush. We talked about westward expansion. We talked about people when they first came to America were along the East Coast and they were moving west. We talked about the Oregon Trail. We talked about Lewis and Clark. We talked about the gold rush. Okay, so they're there. They're also against slavery. So yeah, I think I found that pretty interesting. And trying to come up with something to talk to you guys about Cinco de Mayo, and then doing some research there and then finding out that connection between Cinco de Mayo and the Civil War. And I was like, perfect, we've just finished the Civil War. So that's your takeaway today. It's not Mexican Independence Day. It's not like their 4th of July. So it was really celebrating their win at the Battle of Puebla, which ultimately led to helping the Union win. So now you have a craft to do. It has the 2 popsicle sticks and the yarn. The directions are on the website. It's gonna be really cool and pretty. It's gonna take a little patience, so don't do it when you're in a rush. Do it when you're like kind of chill, maybe after mindfulness. It'll be a good activity to do. And let me know how those, it's called God's Eye, but it'll explain the history of it and how to make it on the website, okay? So I can't wait to see those. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I know it was a tough lesson, but thanks for hanging in there with me, and I will see you guys tomorrow.